Happy Tuesday, my lovely, ambitious women, and welcome to another Training Tuesday. It is Tuesday night. It is 6 o'clock Eastern Time. It is a little bit humid here in New England, but we are well within summer. We just got off here in the U.S. the 4th of July weekend, so I hope everybody is recovering from that one. It was a pretty contentious 4th of July weekend when you consider all the political things that are happening right now in our country. However, it was a long weekend, so we did officially get Monday off. So today's Tuesday, which is officially my Monday, and I'm going to tell you right now, I kind of started it like a Monday. I started today completely unprepared for my meetings. Completely unprepared. And I went to bed last night like knowing I wasn't quite prepared and thinking I'll get up early and I'll make sure I get everything lined up, get my ducks in a row, and I really didn't. So I kind of went into today feeling a little unprepared. Ending today in a much better place, realizing that I had to kind of get my act together and get things organized throughout the day, set myself up for the rest of the week. So that's how my day started. I hope your day started well. Because tonight's topic is about comparison and value and how we value ourselves, how we value the work that we do. And I'm actually glad we hit on this one. Now, as you guys know, if you followed the last couple of Training Tuesdays, we are following the guide I have on smashing your what do I call it? It's your getting the recognition you deserve, right? Smashing the 5 blocks to getting the recognition you deserve. And we're this week on smashing block number 3. And smashing block number 3 is all about how we undervalue what it is we actually bring to the table. And a lot of ways that comes about is through this idea of comparison. So I do want to focus on that tonight. And talk a little bit through the how we compare, why we compare, and how do we get ourselves out of this mindset, because it's really insidious in the way that it affects us. So hello to Jackie and Joyce. I'm glad you guys are here tonight. Thank you for joining as always. Please comment and chat with me as we go, because I want to just start with the idea of competitiveness. Are you competitive? And I think most high-performing women are competitive. And the beautiful thing about being competitive is that it makes us creative. It can be inspiring both to ourselves and to other people. It pushes us to be efficient, to be productive. It keeps us aware of what's happening so that we stay competitive. Yeah, Jackie, who me? Competitive? Yeah, you not at all. Right? So there's a lot of good things that come out of being competitive, right? It keeps us on our edge. It improves the quality of our work. The potential downside to being competitive, though, is that it can overwhelm us and overtake us sometimes. And it gets us used to not failing. And because we're used to not failing, we're in this mode of doing everything to ensure that we don't fail. And that puts us in a little bit of a trap, right? A little bit of a cycle. Because there's a cost to not failing. There's a cost to always having it done well. And that cost is often that we cut out time for friends and family. We cut out our time for self-care, which really just translates into we work a lot longer hours. We work longer hours because we think we have to do it all and do it perfectly. We don't pay attention to our diet. We don't pay attention to exercise. So then we start physically feeling badly. And at the end of the day, all of this leads to burnout. And burnout is kind of that penultimate of I can't take anymore and I am done. And all of this falls in the same bucket. And I am going to take a minor detour here. But it falls into the same bucket of perfectionism. Right, of being the perfectionist. And I really do look at perfectionism as kind of being the root of all evil, right? Because perfectionism drives us to consistently strive for what's unattainable. Perfectionism is not attainable. It's like a moment in time might be a perfect moment, but it's not sustainable. for everything we do all the time. So not only does it push us to keep pushing ourselves to get to that unattainable standard, but we end up enforcing that on others. Our own drive for perfection often bleeds into the other people that we work with. So we're pushing them, whether we're doing it consciously or not, also to try to achieve that unattainable goal. And in constantly going after the unattainable goal, we set ourselves up with our own inferiority complex because we can't attain it. We cannot consistently attain it. This continual striving for perfection also sustains the erroneous belief that we have control. Right? People who are strong with the perfectionist gremlin are people who like to control all the outcomes. And when we try to control all the outcomes, what happens? We try to control all the outcomes. We're trying to solve for every scenario before it even happens. We're trying to plan for every contingency that we can think of. More hours, more time, more burnout. That's what that leads to. It also, perfectionism drives us to be inflexible. Because if we're always striving for this vision of what's perfect, we don't allow ourselves the flexibility to aim for and to celebrate, achieve, enjoy just what's great. What's great? What's good enough? Right? Can we be happy with good enough? For perfectionists, not so much. So one of the kind of coaching mentors, coach mentors that I used to work with is Grace Lever, and she talks about massive imperfect action. She does a lot of advertising online, on Facebook and whatnot, and she's a coach for female entrepreneurs. But the one key message she always pushes out there is massive imperfect action. Why? Because taking action and moving forward, no matter how imperfect it is still moving you forward. Whereas when we get caught in that perfectionism trap, we can actually end up with no action at all. We end up not doing anything because it's not perfect yet. Because we haven't refined it enough. Because we haven't dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, made sure that everything is absolutely perfect. We haven't accounted for all the contingencies that we couldn't possibly plan for. And so we never actually get off the starting line. So when you think about perfectionism, I want you to think about Grace Lever's massive imperfect action, which is just make a choice, move forward with it, learn from it, move on. It's a great model. So that was a little detour into perfectionism I wanted to take, but I wanted to take it because it touches on when we get into comparison mode. So let's talk about comparison and what happens when we undervalue our work. Because that is what we do, especially if we think that our work is less than perfect. So I was thinking about this, and I don't think any of us are ever completely immune to this idea of comparison mode. We just aren't. It's a little bit naturally how we're wired, right? To see what other people are doing and how they're doing. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, what is an area where you feel like you compare yourself the most against others? It might be your career. It might be in the way you communicate. It might be in some sort of presentation skill or tactical skill that you have for your job, whatever it is that you do. But where do you find yourself most of the time comparing yourself to others? It could be personal. Every time I go to yoga, in my head immediately pops up the comparison of, am I the most inflexible one in the room? It's automatic. It's not right. It's not good. It's not bad, I suppose, but it's completely useless. It's completely useless that every time I sit on the yoga mat, I worry that I am the most inflexible person in the room, that I will somehow get it wrong, or somebody will watch me for a move and they'll see that I can't bend that way, the way the other person bent, and that somehow makes me less than. Jackie, looks, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, looks is one area where, yeah, and I'll go into yoga, right, and look at, am I the heaviest person in the room? Not only am I the least flexible, but am I also the heaviest person? We walk into a party. Are we the best dressed person there? Is our makeup just right? How do we look at work when we're in a conference room? And you know what? This is especially for women who are in fields of work where women are the minority. I feel like the comparison mode is even more heightened for us. Because there's so few women to compare yourself to, and now you get that competitive piece where you feel like you have to be better than the other women in the room to prove yourself that you can play with the boys. Certainly earlier in my career, that was very prevalent, not just with me, but with all the women I worked with. There was an awful lot of elbowing going on and not a whole lot of sisterly support, because we were all trying to make it in a male-dominated world, and in order to survive, we felt like we had to best the others. That is a very cave woman mindset. And the cave woman mindset is alive and well in modern women. The problem is just that it's not as applicable. Right now, our livelihood doesn't depend on our looks and our charming personality nearly as much as it depends on our actual skills and ability to take care of ourselves. But when you go back to cave woman mindset, when we were in that era 10,000 years ago, where our wiring is still prevalent, when we were in that time, our livelihood was dependent on men. It was dependent on men as hunters to bring home the meat, to be our protectors, to lead, because most communities were led by men. So our competitiveness with women was far more tightly tied to our ability to survive, because if my male mate decided he didn't want me anymore, and he then took his meat and his protection skills to that other woman, I was left in a very bad place, right? I was left to die because nobody was feeding me, nobody was protecting me, nobody cared. Modern society, we don't have that challenge, but our wiring is still the same, which is why, as Jackie points out, it does hurt us. It does hurt us when we compare ourselves against other women, because right now it is so unnecessary. But it is definitely part of our wiring. So Joyce says, how outgoing? Yeah, so when we're more introverted, when we prefer our own company, say, or it's just hard for us to be in a room full of people and to sort of shake the hands and put ourselves out there, right? That can feel incredibly scary. So we look at all these things and we compare ourselves to others. And when I was thinking about this in a work context, I was thinking about how I had stepped into a role and I was asked to give a presentation at a leadership meeting. So there were, I don't know, maybe 10 other kind of department leads and whatnot in the room. And I was asked to give a presentation on my piece of the business. And I had a peer who was also giving a presentation. And she had been with the company, I'm going to say at least a year longer, maybe 18 months longer. So she wasn't an old hand, but she had been there long enough that she understood what they wanted from her in terms of the presentation, how they expected her to report on her line of business, and all of these things. And on top of that, she was everything I was not, right? She was cute, she was blonde, she was thin, and she was giving this presentation. And we were going back to back because we had comparable lines of business that we were reporting on. So she gave her presentation, I gave mine, and I will tell you, I felt 1,000% inadequate when I gave my presentation. Because she had all these charts and all this data and all these numbers in her presentation that I didn't have in mine. I didn't have all those charts and all of that data. She was presenting an awful lot of metrics and tying it back to a very granular level of detail. I felt inadequate. I felt stupid. I was just like, I'm not even sure I understand the numbers, much less I'm going to put these in my presentation. I felt sure that everyone else in the room was looking at me going, ooh, gosh, did we just hire a dummy? What kind of mistake did we make here? And so I walked out of that meeting going, oh man, I failed. I failed hard and I didn't do the right things. And somehow I should have known better. I should have asked different questions beforehand. I should have prepared better. There was a lot of beating myself up, which I'm sure none of you ever do. After giving a presentation or walking out of me, I'm sure you never beat yourself up for something you said or you didn't say. And I was going through all of that. And this was a regular check-in meeting, so I had another one a month later. So first month on the job, I give this presentation, realize that, wow, my peer, far more in-depth, far more detailed, lots more metrics. So I was like, all right. So the next time that it came around, so 4 weeks later, same kind of update, same format, same group of people. I was up the night before until 1 in the morning. 1 in the morning. I'm not a night person. If you know me, I'm up at 5:30 in the morning, but I am not up past 10 o'clock at night. Like, I am just not a night person. But I was up till 1 in the morning ticking and tying numbers and trying to look for the charts and making sure I had a good number of metrics and details and in the weeds data that would help them see that I understood my business, that I understood what I was doing, that I was the right fit for this job. And I still wasn't 100% certain that I got all of it, but I got enough of it that by 1 in the morning, I was just like, this is it. This is what I'm presenting. And it's going to look enough like hers that, especially 2 months in, I should be comparable. It should be okay. So I refined my slides as best I could. I rehearsed them, by the way. I rehearsed what I was going to say so that I had each number nailed down, each chart, each graph nailed down. We get into the meeting, and the meeting kind of takes a sideways detour on another person's line of business, another person's topic, not mine, not this other woman's, but a third person's line of business. And we ran out of time. Never even got to my slides. And they said, okay, well, we've got to end this here because we all have different things going on. So we'll reschedule the rest of this meeting for, hopefully later this week, but another time soon. And then we'll go through the rest of the presentation. Well, they didn't reschedule. That meeting was like on a Monday or a Tuesday. They didn't reschedule the meeting till the following week, which meant all my numbers were already outdated. And I had to scramble to get the right catch-up numbers because now I had to add on an extra week, and it kind of discombobulated me. And I still overplanned and overprepared, and I delivered it, and it seemed fine. Truthfully, I didn't feel any more competent. I didn't feel any more successful than I had really the first time. I was just like, well, I think I gave them what they want. But now I was like, but did I really give them what they want? Was this really what they asked for? I still had all those insecurities and all that questioning. And I went through a couple cycles of this before I actually sat back and went, this is exhausting me. I am representing my work in a way that is not authentic to me, who I am and how I lead. I am giving people data that I'm not really getting a great response in terms of whether this is actually what they want or not. And I'm really frustrated by the amount of time it takes me to get these numbers and to get this data and to interpret it in a way that seems like it might be meaningful, which, by the way, I only use in this meeting. It's not like I took the data back to my team or back to other groups and said, here's what I learned and found out. Now let's go make this happen. It was strictly just for this meeting. And I was exhausted. And so I went and talked to a mentor of mine, woman at another company, at another business. And she was like, why are you doing all that extra work? Have they asked you to do that? And I was like, well, no, nobody actually gave me this as a template, but I'm watching what this other woman does, and she seems to be successful, and she's doing all right. And she's like, yeah, but that's her line of business. That's the way she presents. What if you just did it your way? There's a novel idea. What if I just did it my way? So the next time I thought, all right, I'm now 7 or 8 months into the job. I've been doing it their way for a good 6 months. And like I said, it was exhausting me. And I wasn't happy with it because I never felt fully comfortable with what I was talking about. And it wasn't that I didn't know my numbers or my business. It was just the way that I was sharing it wasn't my way. So I focused instead on what's my strong suit. My strong suit isn't diving into spreadsheets and charts. It wasn't into, nitpicking data points. My strong suit was in figuring out the story. What's the story we're trying to sell? What's the story that we're moving to? What's the reaction to the story? And yes, that will translate into some numbers and growth in revenue. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm reporting on. But I'm not all about the number of website visitors as it translates to lead form fills, as it translates to qualified leads, as it translates then to revenue. I'm much more interested in bigger story. Here's the activities that we did. Here's the story that we told. Here's the people who responded, and that's what translated into revenue. So I thought, all right, we're going to tell it my way. And instead of diving into the weeds, I'm going to step back and I'm going to tell them a couple of stories about what's working for us. So my presentation ended up being very different from my counterparts, but it was my version of storytelling. And at the end of the day, I still gave them the end number that they were interested in, just not the 10 sets of numbers that led to that number. I wasn't walking through a detailed funnel. And that was the first time I got feedback. That was the first time I got feedback from that group of leaders saying, that was a good presentation. Thank you for sharing that. That was interesting to hear how you're thinking about that and what your philosophy is behind that. They never responded at all to my 6 months worth of metrics that I was giving, but they did respond to my stories. Now, that's not because my way of presenting was necessarily better than my counterparts, but it was my way. And I was so much more comfortable delivering it that I guarantee you my way of sharing the information was far more inspiring and far more engaging and made them feel like I knew what I was talking about, rather than me tiptoeing my way through datas and charts and metrics that I just didn't love. That's my work version of keeping up with the Joneses, because my counterpart, she's a lovely woman named Carla. Carla was my Joneses. Carla Jones, we'll call her. Right? I spent 6 months trying to do things her way and to look. I was never going to be blonde. I was never going to be as thin as she was. But damn it, I could do reports the same way she could. And guess what? I could. But I didn't love them and they didn't really work for me. We keep up with the Joneses in all sorts of ways, right? Not just at work, but we look at our neighbors and who's got the fancier car, who built the addition to their house, right? And oh gosh, could we afford the same thing? We look at our friends and we look at, are they carrying a designer purse, or did they get to go on that great vacation to Hawaii and can I afford the same thing? And we're always looking at ourselves in relation to the success and status we see in the people around us. We measure ourselves against other people's standards, which means we're always struggling to keep up with other people's standards. And this erodes our confidence, completely erodes our confidence. And Jackie, I see your comment. It's about thriving, not surviving. So still the same wavelength, and you're absolutely right. Right? Now we're in a place, modern woman with our 10,000-year-old cave woman brain, but modern woman is in a place where we've got the skills we need to survive. Now it's how do we thrive, right? How do we make this life what we want it to be? And as long as we are comparing ourselves to Carla Jones and the others like her, we're not thriving. We're barely surviving, because eroding our confidence means we're never stepping up. When we are living to other people's expectations, right? When we're trying to meet what other people are expecting, it means we're trying to meet their values. And we don't know what underpins their values and why. What we do know is our set of values is oftentimes different from other people's. We often value different things. Some people have a high value system in place around consistency and stability, and other people have it around adventure and fun, and other people have it around relationships and connections. We all have a value system, and we all have somewhere between 3 and 5 key values that we make our decisions on. But if we submerge our values in order to live up to somebody else's, we compare ourselves to somebody else, we're trying to live up to that standard. We are now trying to live up to somebody else's expectations and somebody else's values, which erodes at our own, because we are no longer focusing on ourselves and what makes us happy. We are no longer focused on our goals and what we want. And when we're not focused on that, it means we never get there. If we're always focused on doing better than somebody else, we're never actually getting where we want to go. We may not even know what our goal is because we're just so busy trying to outdo another person. or trying to get ourselves above a standard where we think, finally, if I'm have that better car and that better house, then I've achieved better than those two people. Now I'll be accepted. Now I'll be recognized. Now I'll be satisfied. And what we forget is that satisfaction doesn't actually come from getting that car and having that better house, excuse me, or even having that better job, because it's not aligned to our values. Our sense of satisfaction comes when we are living in alignment with our values, when we are doing what is important to us, both here and here. Not just here, but the connection in both the heart and the head. Our sense of dissatisfaction, it's internal. It's not external, right? When we sit back and we look at the world, and we wonder why that person can be happy driving that 20-year-old jalopy car that's all, the paint's all faded, there's a couple of dents in it. Why are they happy with that? Because in their value system that makes them happy, the car is not relevant. And when I say this, I'm actually thinking of my daughter, who drives a 20-year-old car that I gave her, that is faded paint. It's got dings and dents on it. She has a tendency to run into non-moving objects. She doesn't view it as a status symbol because she has a car. She views it as a tool to get her from A to B only when there is no public transportation. Because her value for saving money and not paying for gas is much higher than her value for having a fancy car. Right? Our value systems, when we align to them internally, that's where our sense of satisfaction comes from. Our external chasing of other people's goals has nothing to do with how we feel about ourselves. And that's the gap we have to close, because comparing with other people is the wrong measuring stick. It's the one that keeps us in this mindset where we do not value what we bring to the table. This is how we undervalue ourselves. We compare ourselves to other people and what they're doing, and we automatically undervalue what we're already bringing to the table. We already put ourselves in a position where our mindset and our energy are not good enough. So we start at a place where we are already presenting to the world. So I want you to think about this. Think about my situation. I was comparing myself to my friend Carla Jones and was feeling like, if I can't present her way, her metrics, do this thing, then I'm not living up to expectations, which, by the way, were her expectations. Nobody said to me you had to do this. And my mindset already going into it was, I don't think I trust these numbers. I'm not sure I know all of this data. I'm not sure I can walk through it the way that she does. I'm already coming with energy that says, I'm not comfortable. I'm not good enough. If that's the energy I'm bringing to my presentation, how does that build confidence in anyone else listening to me that I'm the right person for this role? It doesn't. I don't have confidence to exude, much less to share and loan to others so that they can pick up on it and feed it back to me. Instead, I'm feeding them a lot of maybes. I don't know. It seems this way. Here's what I think you want. Do you want this? Do you think, I think you want this. Do you want this? Right? I'm feeding them an awful lot of hesitation and concern and worry, and not a whole lot of confidence, and certainly not a whole lot of myself. I am preconditioning my audience to doubt me because I doubt myself. That's what happens when you go into comparison mode and then you undervalue what you already bring to the table. You are priming your audience to already not believe you. I want you to think about the secondary impact of that. I was thinking about how to phrase that. There's a secondary impact to that. If you ignore your own knowledge, skills, and intuition, right? You ignore what you already bring to the table and you undervalue it. What are you teaching the other people around you who are looking to you to be their leader and their mentor? You're teaching them to undervalue themselves because they see you distrusting yourself, and yet you're the one they're looking to model themselves after. That could be coworkers, that could be peers, that could be team members, that could be your kids. When you show up uncertain of yourself, the people who naturally look to you as their leader start doubting themselves. we feed it. We create that chain and we don't even realize it. Now, there's the other side of this, and I said this a little bit earlier too, is when we have those perfectionist tendencies and we demand perfectionism of ourselves and we drive ourselves into the ground, we also share that same tendency with the rest of our team. So you could be leading a team that is also driving themselves into the ground to live up to your standard of perfection, rather than modeling, hey, here are the great things I bring to the table. And maybe they're not perfect by your standards, but they're still pretty great. And here's the value you can get from that. And that's the conversation you want to be able to have, is to recognize what is all the fabulous stuff that we do bring to the table. And how do we celebrate that so that we value our work for what it's actually worth? So here are the 5 steps I want you to take to stop comparing and start valuing your work. Stop comparing to everybody else, start valuing your work. And we're going to start this really simple, which is you sit down at the end of a day and you pick 3 accomplishments. What are 3 things you did today? And they can be basic things. It can be, you know what, like I started tonight telling you about how like I was just unprepared. I was unprepared to start my week. My first couple meetings, I did not review the documents I was supposed to review. I didn't think through the things I was not prepared, and I own that. And I owned it in those meetings. So accomplishment number 1 for me today is I showed up. Knowing I was unprepared, I still showed up because I had a job to do. I had people to talk to. I had decisions to make. I still showed up. That's accomplishment number 1. Accomplishment number 2. What would accomplishment number 2 be today? Accomplishment number 2 would be I did make a decision and sign off on a project. I am moving that forward. Accomplishment number 3. I sent a carefully worded email to a difficult personality, to which there will be a follow-up conversation. I didn't put it off, which was incredibly tempting. When you're dealing with difficult people, right, we have to think through how we're going to communicate with them, not only what language, but which channels and what the order is and all of that stuff. And I had to think that through, and then I had to deliver on it. I had to act on it. So again, think about massive imperfect action. I showed up even though I wasn't ready, made a decision. Did I have all the data I needed? Maybe not, but I made a decision to move forward anyway. And I have started down this difficult path, this path of a difficult conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to be had through multiple channels. Those are my 3 things. So now I got to evaluate myself. So the first thing you do, you pick your 3 accomplishments, and then you evaluate yourself. How did you do? Did you hit your goals? Well, did I hit my goal of being prepared today? I certainly did not. Scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give myself a 2. I was not prepared. So did I hit that goal? No. Did I give it my best effort? Yes. Because I showed up and I went all in even though I didn't do my homework. So, 2 on did I hit my goal? I'm going to give myself an 8 on I showed up. Because was I nervous about showing up? Yes. Did I think about not showing up? Of course I did. But I did show up. And I showed up and I owned it. And I said, you know what? Not as prepared as I should be. Give me a minute. Talk me through this piece. Okay, now we can move forward. So step 1 is the self-evaluation. You pick your 3 and then self-evaluate. How did you do? Did you hit your goal? Did you give it your best effort? Those are the questions you ask. I find it helpful to scale myself on a 1 to 10, with 1 being very low or not at all and 10 being best I could possibly do. Because that number gives me a sense of the range I'm playing in. Second question. What is the actual feedback you got from a boss, a colleague, a coworker? Actual feedback, not what do you think they're thinking. That doesn't count. You have to actually get the feedback. So if I picked the first meeting that I was in, there were 2 meetings I was not prepared for. First meeting I was not prepared for. I did actually go back to that person afterwards and say, listen, I realize I showed up unprepared. I apologize for my lack of preparedness. In the future, what can I do to help make this go better? And I actually got feedback from him that said, you know what? Your lack of preparedness ended up not being a problem because we ended up talking through things that I probably should have emphasized in a previous call. We ironed it out. We ended up in a good place. So actual feedback was he was fine. but I had to ask for it because I wouldn't have assumed he was fine. I would have been more inclined to assume that he thought I was scatterbrained and an airhead and completely unprepared. And I would have taken that message with me. So you have to ask what the actual feedback is. And it can be a simple, short text message. It can be an email. It can be a quick phone call. But what you're looking for is because question number 3 is, what is the gap between your self-evaluation and your feedback? Now, the gap for me was, did I hit my goal? No, that was a 2. I was not prepared. The feedback was, it's okay you weren't prepared because we ended up talking through some things that needed to be addressed anyway, so it worked out. So is there a gap? Sure. How big is the gap? Not huge, since he wasn't flustered by it. Why does the gap exist? Because I fell down. And how much of the gap is based on my perception? Oh, a lot of it is based on my perception. My perception of perfection. I should have been 100% prepared. But knowing exactly where the gap is and how big a gap is leads me then to what I could do differently. And that's the next piece. What could you have done differently? Based on that feedback, what I could have done differently is I could have read the document beforehand like I was supposed to. I could have formulated some key questions beforehand, which might have taken us through a different conversation, but still would have been useful. It would have made me personally more satisfied had I been better prepared. I would have been happier with myself. But when you think about what you could do differently, I also want you to ask this. Who is the best qualified person to get this job done? Was there someone else more qualified than me to manage that conversation this morning to come to the decision I came to? Maybe sometimes the answer is, yeah, I shouldn't have been having that conversation in the first place. That should have been my boss, or that should have been a team member. That should have been somebody on my team. But who was better qualified to do this job today that needed to get done? Sometimes the answer is me. It was me. Regardless of all my failings, I was the best qualified person to handle that meeting at that time. Now, if you find there is a gap between your performance and the expectations, not just that you set, but the actual feedback you got from others, and this is something you want to improve, then number 5 is get a mentor. Who can mentor you? Find a coach or a mentor who can support you in your current role as well as in your career path, where you want to go, your future aspirations. And consider that it can be more than one people. You should have a team of people supporting you. So just to recap, those 5 steps that we take, right? Once we pick 3 accomplishments, you pick 3 accomplishments, and then you ask yourself, how did I do? And you evaluate yourself on, did I hit my goal? And did I give it my best effort? Second question you ask, what is the actual feedback I am getting? From boss, from peers, from coworkers, whoever. What is the actual feedback? Not your made up feedback, not your, oh, but I knew by the way they rolled their eyes, or I knew by the way they said this thing. No, no, no. Go back after the fact and ask for the feedback. 3, what is the gap between your self-evaluation and the feedback that you've gotten? 4, what could you have done differently? If there is a gap, based on that feedback and based on your own personal sense of accomplishment, what could you have done differently? When you answer that question, you're also going to answer the question, who is best qualified to do this job? And then question number 5 is, who can mentor me to help me be better? Who's the coach or the mentor that I'm going to work with to ensure that I reach my longer term career goals? Wrapping all of this up, set a deadline. When you run into a project or a situation, a meeting, sometimes it's a one-time thing, sometimes it's an ongoing thing, but when you run into a situation where you are comparing yourself to someone else and undervaluing your work, walk through this exercise and set a deadline for when you are going to answer these questions and find your solution. So if you find yourself, say, delivering a project presentation and it's you're halfway through the presentation, you're halfway through the project, you're delivering a midpoint presentation, set yourself a goal that within 48 hours after delivering that presentation, I'm going to get the feedback, I'm going to answer these questions and define the gap, and I'm going to give myself those 48 hours to find the mentor who's going to help me push this project forward, who's going to help me get even better results, who's going to help me ensure that I am on track and not just beating myself up needlessly because I'm comparing to other people, and not just giving myself a free pass because there's so much going on. And I say that with a little bit of a smirk because I know that if you're part of this group and you're part of the ambitious women that are out there, we don't give ourselves free passes. We think about it and we think we do, but we don't actually. We don't actually do that. All right, so give yourself a deadline. That's part of our motivation to ensure that we are consistently moving forward with our massive imperfect action. All right, I know I ran a little late tonight, but thank you, ladies, for joining me for tonight. We want to smash block number 3, which is the obstacle getting in the way of you getting the recognition you deserve, rewards and recognition. And it all comes down to being in self-comparison mode and undervaluing what you bring to the table. So share your comments with me, ask your questions, would love to help you overcome this particular block and help smash it. If you'd like to have a conversation about that, drop the word dig in the chat. We'll do a Dirty Girl mini dig. So we'll talk through what exactly is at the root of this particular block for you. Free 15-minute coaching conversation. Just write the word dig, Dirty Girl mini dig, and we will dig into the root of what is hindering this block for you and get you moving forward. Love to help you guys. Always enjoy Training Tuesdays with you. Have a fabulous night.